First of all, Elijah failed to take account of the aftermath of success. He failed to take account of the aftermath of success. I can remember a sermon preached by one of my lecturers at Bible College entitled, After Great Moments. After Great Moments. And one of the points that he made during that sermon was that often we are at our most vulnerable and Satan is at his most dangerous in the aftermath of a great achievement. That in actual fact we are the most prone to temptation and to falling as we bask in the warm afterglow of success. Because in that situation, when life's good, things are going well, there is the danger of becoming overconfident. We see this all the time in the sporting realm. When a team scores a goal, or a try, or a basket, or whatever type of score is registered, subconsciously, there's a tendency to relax. And that momentary lapse of concentration can often be enough for the opposing team to score an equaliser. And then everything is back to all square again. And what happens in the sporting realm very often happens in life itself. David was at the height of his power and prestige when he succumbed spectacularly to the temptation of the devil. Over and over again in Scripture, in history, and in life, we see all too well the relevance of the warning. So, if you think you are standing firm, be careful that you don't fall. The aftermath of success, we need to be aware of overconfidence. We also need to be aware of the reality of anticlimax. You see, after any great moment, after any great achievement, there is a sense of letdown. Now, I'm sure that all of us have experienced this. You know, perhaps you've gone to some great camp meeting. Or maybe it's been a wonderful week of prayer. Or maybe it's been a particularly outstanding occasion of Sabbath worship. And you've come away enthused and excited and empowered, and you want to take on the world. You're so excited about what you've heard and experienced. And then you return to the routine of everyday life. Wow. And you experience a sense of letdown. And you wonder, why am I feeling this? What's going on? Was all that enthusiasm and excitement a dream? What's happening here? Charles Spurgeon is widely regarded as the outstanding preacher in the English-speaking world in the 1800s. For a number of decades, he had a marvellous ministry at the Metropolitan Tabernacle in the city of London. And yet Charles Spurgeon fought a lifelong battle against depression and discouragement. And he wasn't slow in sharing those experiences and lessons with his students. In fact, he told them that most often the depression, the discouragement was greatest leading up to or leading away from some great moment, some great achievement. He said this on one occasion: when at last a long-cherished desire is fulfilled, when God has been glorified greatly by our means and a great triumph achieved, then we are apt to faint. It might be imagined that amid special favours our soul would soar to heights of ecstasy and rejoice with joy unspeakable, but it is generally the reverse. Excess of joy or excitement must be paid for by subsequent depressions. While the trial lasts, the strength is equal to the emergency. But when it is over, natural weakness claims the right to show itself. You see, it's impossible for you and I to live on a high all the time. We can't live on the mountaintop all the time. We've got to come down. Emotionally, psychologically, you can't live on a high all the time. And when you realize that, when you're aware of that, then you can be prepared for the feelings that you might experience when you come down off the mountaintop into the valley. You can be prepared for that sense of letdown, that reality of anticlimax. But it would appear that Elijah had not bargained for that. Possibly he had expected too much. His expectations were unrealistic. Perhaps he thought that that demonstration of fire, that power, the end of the drought, that Ahab, that Jezebel, that the people would say, God is God, let's follow him. And so when Jezebel turned round and said, I'm going to get you, he couldn't handle it. It didn't meet his expectations. And so faced with the prospect of fight or flight, he fled. And fled as far as he could. And so Elijah failed to understand the aftermath of success. He had unrealistic expectations. Another reason why his situation changed so dramatically was because he was tired. He was tired. In fact, he was extremely tired. His tiredness is mentioned on a few occasions in this passage of Scripture. You see, for years, he had lived life on the edge. For at least 3 years, he had been public enemy number one. He had just engaged in a great struggle, climaxing in a titanic confrontation with the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. And those years of pressure and service took their toll. The ancient Greeks had a saying, you will break the bow if you always keep it bent. In other words, if you and I live in a pressure cooker situation all the time, if we are living life on the edge, if we are pushing ourselves to the limits over and over again, there will be a breaking point. And each one of us in this place this morning has a breaking point. It will vary from individual to individual, but we all have a breaking point. The fact of the matter is that tiredness makes us less resilient. When we're tired, things that normally we could take into our stride become insurmountable obstacles. And so we need to recognize the importance of rest and refreshment. But that doesn't come easy to us in our particular tradition. As individuals, as a church, we pay great respect to what is known as the Protestant work ethic. And it's a very fine ethic. And it's so important that we have purpose and drive in our lives. That enables us to live life to the full. But it's also important to recognize the need for rest and refreshment. I cannot read music. But apparently on a sheet of music there is something that indicates a rest. Now there is no music in a rest. But a rest is very much a part of music. A rest is part of the rhythm of music. And rest is part of the rhythm of life. Our bodies have a daily rhythm. Our bodies have a weekly rhythm. That's why Sabbath is so important. And it's very important that we respect those rhythms, that we make a provision for rest and refreshment in our lives. Because if we don't, it will lead to illness. It will lead to the sort of situation in which Elijah found himself. He found himself so down that he wanted to die.